I started using HelloFresh when both my husband and I were in the thick of building our businesses. We both enjoy cooking, but didn't have time for the shopping and the prep. We still wanted to give our family healthy, delicious meals, so we signed up for HelloFresh. Every recipe was a smash hit with not only us, but all 3 of our kids. HelloFresh made it possible for us to stay in our genius zone and freed up more of our time to be present with our kids. I've given it as a gift to fellow entrepreneurs who are in those early stages of building so they can eat fresh and healthy while growing their businesses. Menu planning doesn't have to be one more thing on your to-do list. With over 50 recipes and other market fresh items, you have endless options for yummy food without the hassle. With summer upon us, you can cut down on time spent in the kitchen so you can get back to enjoying the summer sunshine and building that business. Thanks to HelloFresh's quick and easy recipes. Every week's menu features options that are ready in just 20 minutes or less, which is even quicker than fast food delivery or frozen pizzas. And when you sign up today, you'll unlock free appetizers for life. Get the party started or enjoy a little pre-dinner treat with an appetizer of your choice in every HelloFresh box for free. Go to HelloFresh.com/MUAPPS for free appetizers for life. 1 appetizer item per box while subscription is active. That's free appetizers for life at HelloFresh.com/MUAPPS. Head over and get started with HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
I think everybody has the opportunity and the ability to become financially free.
Welcome to the Millionaire University podcast. I'm your host, Brian Gearin, and in today's class, we're going to learn from Chris Brown. He is the owner of Signs of Good. It's a billboard company that he started on the side of a day job back in 2011 and has grown to over $30,000 plus per month in top-line revenue. Chris has achieved financial freedom in his early 40s, retiring by age 42, thanks in large part to his nearly passive billboard company. So class is now in session. Chris, the podium is yours. Chris, I got to know, how did you get into the business, and really what was your inspiration for getting into the billboard world?
Yeah, it was actually happenstance, just me driving underneath a billboard that I had been looking at for a couple of years and it hadn't changed. And I actually made a call on it. But the reason that it was even available in my head was because I had been studying passive income and building up my portfolio through real estate and other things. And so it made the opportunity come to life for me. So I was actually saw that when I was driving by it and made that call to the person that owned it to acquire that first one.
Okay, so tell me all about that first billboard. So you might have buried the lead here. You're just driving along and you notice this billboard. What was it about it? We all see billboards, but what was it for you that was like, that looks kind of cool. I wonder who owns it. And then how'd you even find them?
Yeah, so I was driving past it back and forth to work every day for a couple of years, like I said, and I was just interested in it. I had previously owned a digital signage company in the local mall a few years before. And so it was fascinating to me, the advertising space. But as I drove underneath this, I noticed that it had not changed. It had been run down. And so I started to think about what would it be to own a physical billboard versus the digital signs that I had. So I looked up the owner and found out who it was in the county records, and then made that phone call once I tracked him down. And he was actually going through, this was in the great financial crisis in 2011, right after that. He was actually about to go through a bankruptcy. So he was like, yes, I'd be glad to sell it to you. What I paid for it, you can have it, and it's yours. And so it was a tremendous opportunity that I had that doesn't normally come along. And I didn't know that until after the fact. That's what kind of got me into the billboards.
Wow. Okay. So what was this first board like? High traffic? Was it just a traditional analog one-sided billboard? What did it look like?
Yeah, so it's called a double stacked billboard. So it's 2 sides, but 2 billboards, one on top of the other. So that's a double stacked billboard off of one of the secondary highways we have. So it wasn't our main highway. It was a secondary highway, but it was interesting because it had been built in between a couple of neighborhood developments that are going up. Because the billboard was there before, they started developing neighborhoods around it. So people literally have to drive underneath this billboard to make a curve or to go to a different road to get off to go into the neighborhoods. And so it was an ideal location, lots of great independent traffic, local traffic going down that, but right off of a main highway, which made it good visibility for the people and the advertisers themselves as well.
Okay. And then, so I got to ask you, you find this board. How did you know who owned it? I guess, was there a number on the board? Did you have to do some sort of like sleuthing to find your way to the random, did you say it was a developer that actually owned it?
Yeah, so after looking through it, the developer who built a neighborhood across the street actually owned the parcel and owned the billboard itself. He'd built it to advertise his new development that he had done along that highway. So how I looked it up was, again, a lot of people do this in real estate. You can use something like skip tracing, or you can kind of go back and find it in the county records. So I looked up who owned it, and then I tracked that owner down via just local searches and Google searches. So I was able to find the guy that actually owned it, reached out to him, and found out he owned a lot of land and a lot of other properties in the area, but was going through a bad time after the great financial crisis.
So what did that first investment look like? You said he was ready to sell it. He wanted to get rid of it. It was during the crisis, and he sold it at what he paid for. What was that cost to you?
Yeah, so that cost was actually $75,000. What was interesting was he actually pulled out a receipt that he had paid for install, everything back then when he had built it. And he said, here, you can have it for that. And that actually included the parcel of land that it was sitting on as well. So a 1/4 acre that it sits on, and that included that as well. So super deal. Not going to find that every day. Haven't found one since that, but that was an amazing first find for me for sure.
And did you come to that deal all cash? Did you finance? Now, we haven't really talked about what you were doing before Billboards or while you were doing Billboards. So give us a little context on that as well.
Yeah, so I was actually working a W-2 job at the time. And so I had been driving to a job, but I had built up cash because I did do a lot of real estate investing. I had started a company prior to that as well, but I had cash for this deal, that $75,000, and I just came to the table with that, and I made that purchase all out. Just wanted to get it quick. So we closed in 2 weeks on that. I did as much due diligence as I could, but quickly closed because I did not want to lose that opportunity. And that cash allowed me to do that. And it cash flowed great ever since then.
Love it. All right. So you bought it outright. You have this billboard. Now what? How'd you get an advertiser?
Yeah. The great thing about billboards is they are advertisements. So I had numbers on it, but what I actually did was just, once I acquired it, I called a couple of friends of mine that own local businesses. So a car dealer, I called them a furniture store, and both of them were like, yeah, that's right in the middle of a really busy area. And so they were like, yes, we'd love to do that. And so they put their ads up there. One of those advertisers is still there almost 13 years later on that same billboard. He's stayed with me this whole time. Really good customer base and a really good location makes a big difference.
That's 13 years. That's a heck of a lifetime value right there.
Oh, for sure. No, for sure. And so, yeah, the great thing about the billboards is a lot of times you can put a number up on them and people will just give you a call from that number. But again, reaching out, no one knew I had it. I just wanted to reach out and found those first few customers just on people I knew that owned businesses locally.
All right, so you find a couple of first advertisers on there. How did you know what to charge them? How did you set up the deal? Was this had to be brand new territory for you, right?
Yeah, it was. It was definitely new territory. I had never owned a billboard like that before, so made a couple of calls, just saw what the local rates were going. So you can find other competitors in the market. You can ask around, see what other people are charging. And then you kind of find a rate that says, hey, I want to keep this full. So I undercut it just a little bit because I was more worried about keeping it full than I was trying to make top dollar off the monthly rent.
Okay. So now you have your pricing set. Do you remember what the price was at that time? And this was back in 2011, is that right? 2011,
yeah. So it was about $600 a month. I think that's what it was, $650. I can't remember exactly per board. And so had that on there, kept them up. So you're talking $1,200 a side, right? So $2,400 total for the whole billboard, $2,400 to $3,000 a month off that one billboard.
So you're within about, I shouldn't do math on air, but within roughly 3 years of making your return on investment.
Full return on cash, yes, absolutely. So that's why I love billboards so much is the cash flow they produce and the amount you can get for the amount you can get into them. You start to think about that $2,500 estimated, amount of rent coming in on a $75,000 purchase. It's hard to get that on a single family home, duplex, triplex, fourplex, even some apartments get tough to make that kind of return on investment.
Yeah, and we might talk about that a little bit later on in our conversation, but the fact that this is almost, if you compare it to traditional real estate ownership or real estate investing, a lot less headaches because a board's not calling you when the toilet breaks, or you're not dealing with evictions or any of the headaches that come with owning a property.
That's exactly right. That's one of my favorite things. I tell people, no tenants, no toilets. And if somebody doesn't pay their rent, then I can easily just take down their sign, whether it's a digital or a physical sign. I can just remove the banner or the vinyl and then put up another one and resell it. I don't have to deal with the laws of taking care of tenants, evictions, of anything like that, going to court. You do have a contract, obviously, and you want to work with your clients and make sure that you're doing good by them and having good communication with your customers. But outside of that, you have a lot less of those headaches. It's a big piece of metal and some very, very few moving parts, some electricity and that kind of stuff. So just a lot less maintenance on that as well.
Perfect. I'm going to have a lot more questions on margins and business math here, but first I kind of want to zoom back out. And now you've got your first board. It's ROI positive. How did you start building your portfolio of billboards? I mean, there has to be, what is it, like Lamar and Norton, Clear Channel? They've got all these, it feels like it's kind of conglomerated. Is that accurate, or is there plenty of opportunity out there?
Well, I would say it's definitely you have your handful of big players. So your Lamar, your Clear Channel, your CBS, Outfront, those guys across the nation, very big players across that own a lot of the inventory. However, there's still lots of opportunity for independent operators such as myself. So like in my metro area, I'm the largest independent operator in my little metro. And so that allows me to continue to build and continue to grow. What's great is that because of that, there's always a built-in buyer if I ever wanted to sell my inventory that I have or my billboards that I have eventually as a business. They would be buyers. They would line up and bid on that.
Okay. Interesting. So it's more of there's plenty of room in the independent space, but it depends on, you got to get your foot in the door and you got to start slowly acquiring and finding more and more of these boards. So let's talk about that process. How do you start finding more of these boards? Is it like when you originally found your first one, you just found the number and called? Is there a method to the madness? Is there a platform to buy these things on? How do you do that?
Yeah, definitely not just an easy thing, right? Otherwise, everybody would do it. What's great were back in the days in the 1960s, there was actually the Billboard Beautification Act that was put out there, which actually limited and restricted on the federal highways who could put up, how you could do it, and they were very regulated. The great news was that actually increased the value of the existing billboards or any new billboards because it is regulated. Not everybody could get in it. So what's interesting was back into the 1900s, anybody and everybody could put up a sign that advertised anything, which made them worth not very much at all. But actually the regulations now have actually increased the value of the inventory that's out there because it is regulated. And so the ones you do have or you do get up are harder to get up and then allow you to grab more of the attention and then also get more dollars for each board that goes up.
Huh. Okay. So the regulation drove up the value because it's harder to get in. That makes sense, which is great for you once you start owning
once you get in, yes.
Creating a portfolio.
Yes. Once you understand how to do that. So then you can do a couple of things. You can build, you can buy, you can lease someone else's. So there's multiple ways you can do that. So like I gave you that first example was I bought an existing inventory. So there was an existing sign that was up. I talked to the owner. I purchased that from them. And billboards trade every day, every week across the country. Somebody's either getting out of it. They built up a portfolio and they wanted to take their money off the table, or they're tired of managing them, or they have a situation, somebody dies in the family, have a divorce, whatever it may be. So there's always opportunities, and a lot of independent operators have one or two, and maybe they're managing it well, maybe they're not. So it's like any other business or even rental properties that a lot of things are just mismanaged and they don't want to do it, but doesn't mean it's not a good opportunity. The second route is then to actually go build your own. And so then you're now finding a location and building a structure yourself or having someone build that structure for you. And then you're leasing that out afterwards as well. So both of them at the end get you a billboard structure, but you can go two different ways of acquiring versus building.
Well, so let's talk about that building part because that's interesting. How many in your portfolio have you built?
Yeah, so I've built all but the first one. So I've actually built all but the first one. Yeah, so I have about an inventory of 30 right now, and almost all of them were actually built by me other than those 4.
Wow. Okay. So what is that process like? I imagine it's a little more expensive, but tell us about that.
Yeah. So the process is like anything. You have to first start with where is the location you want to be. So you have to kind of understand regulations, understand where you can put them, and then you got to go out and acquire the land. So that's the first thing you do, is go find a location. You have to understand the traffic patterns, where the migration of the population is, what's going to drive value of this. So what I love about billboards is you can actually increase the value of them by multiple different things. So I can have one on a really big, heavy trafficked highway. And so I'm selling impression counts, right? So similar to you do with media, we would say, look, this is getting this many impressions by this many people driving by. The higher the number of people, the eyeballs, whatever, the higher the values. However, because it is a supply and demand, you can also do that by having low supply in an area. So a couple of my billboards are actually not on the main highway, but on a secondary highway that's still heavily trafficked. But I have the only billboards for 30 miles on these couple of highways, which therefore there's not a lot of competition. So then I actually get rates close to the same amount as they do on the main highways, because there's no other options if somebody wanted to advertise on those and to reach those people.
Wow. Okay. So if you're building a board, I imagine you have to buy the little piece of land that you put it on first. No? Or I guess you could lease it from whoever owns it.
You can do a couple of things. You can lease it from somebody, or you can buy the land. And I've done a mixture of both. So you can go find the piece of land. You can ask the owner of the land if you can lease it from them, or get a lease or an easement, or even they can do those short term, they can do them long term, they can do them forever. Or you can buy it and then you can put it up on your own. So there's lots of different ways that you can do that. You can actually own the land. It's a great land play. If you're in the land or business of acquisition of land, which is one of the things I do for my investments, is allows me to buy land. And then if I can put a billboard on it, then I get additional income out of on a piece of commercial property that I have. So I can build a building, I can also put a billboard, and then I have both generating revenue or income from that property.
Okay, so I keep thinking of the idea of my in-laws. My wife's parents live kind of out in the sticks. And when we drive out there, we drive up a rural route. And there are a few billboards here and there. They're smaller and they're real close to the state route, but they're usually just on the other side of the farmer's fence. So A, can you buy like a little piece of land from that farmer, or do you strike a deal to lease from them? Or B, could you go to the state or the city or the county, whoever owns the amount of grass between the field and the street, purchase that or lease it from the city? How does that work?
Yeah, so you technically can do two of those three. That's, you go to a farmer and you want to buy off a little piece. Now, unless he's in the mood or she is in the mood to sell that parcel, they don't want to go through the hassle of dividing up that property and parceling off a piece. Now, if they're doing that or they already have it parceled off, then they're for it and they're okay with that. If not, it's just a land lease. And farmers are used to that because they lease out property for grazing, for their cows or for crops all the time. It's been done for 50, 100,000 years probably, as they go out and lease somebody's land. So I can go to him and say, look, I'm looking for this many square feet. I just need access to it a couple of times a year and to run power to it. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. And here's the rate. We just kind of negotiate whatever that rate would be. And they would do that. Counties and federal highways do not let you put them in their right-of-ways. So you cannot put them in the federal highway right-of-ways or exits or anything like that. So you won't be able to do that, but you can do it from the local, and you can do it again, purchase or the lease from them.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
With supply chains becoming more complex, you need to stay on top of the latest logistics developments. So if you work with logistics, you need the Beyond the Box podcast from Maersk. It's the easy way to keep up to date with everything from digital disruption in logistics to the need for supply chain resilience in today's market. Find out more and keep ahead of the game with the Beyond the Box podcast on logistics insights at maersk.com/insights.
Okay, and then so let's say you're leasing it from the property owner. Does that lease look like a piece of the income, the revenue from the billboard? Is it like just a determined monthly retainer for this little piece of land? What does that look like?
It can be done either way. So you can actually structure it as a percentage of revenue per year. So that way you kind of split the upside and downside with the person. So you can say, hey, look, there's a 10%, 15% of the revenue that's coming in. I'll share with you, and then you have to be very open and show them that books, and you have to show that to them. You can also just say, hey, look, I'll pay you this flat amount on a monthly rate or a yearly rate, and you take the risk or they take the risk either way, and whatever feels right to them, and you negotiate that deal so that they would have a long-term lease on that.
Okay, so let's talk pricing now. We're talking in 2024 dollars, especially if you have a lease. I want to talk about what you price for advertisers, and then we'll get into the types of boards that you use, because there's a couple different types. But what does pricing look like on your traditional analog and then on digital billboards, which I know are a very big thing these days as well?
Yeah, so I think it just depends on the location. So location drives value on those. So you can have billboards in a city from $400 or $200 from some of those smaller ones that you just gave the example, that you're driving through the rural area and you see those just on a small poster sign, couple of 2x4s and plywood sheets and even maybe some telephone poles. And those can be $250, $300 a month, which is, again, it's great for the amount you put into that. And then you can then go up to $3,000 to $4,000 for here locally per month for a board that you would see on the highway or something like that. Now, you get into Times Square, you get into big markets, downtowns, you can get into $15,000, $20,000 per hour, per day, per minute, whatever it may be, just depending on that. So it ranges greatly. The advertiser can get into it for cheap, $200, $300 a month, or all the way up to tens of thousands of dollars a month.
It's variable pricing depending on the type of board, where the board is, and who you're dealing with. I want to talk about digital billboards. How do those work? I know driving down the main drag, the highway near me here, there's digital billboards all over. There's traditional as well, but I'm starting to see just as many digital, it seems like. How does pricing work for digital board? How does the timing work? How many more advertisers can you get in on a digital board? And how's that work?
Yeah, so digitals are very interesting. So it's one of those catch-22s. They have a lot of flexibility and a lot of great things about them. So one, it allows you to multiple advertisers. So what you'll see, we call them flips. So it's the number of flips of advertisers per rotation. So basically most industry averages about 7 per minute of different advertisers that would flip through there. So you'd see them every 6 point something seconds, which allows you to have every minute they would flip through there. That's what they would do. So you can get 7 advertisers on one side per minute. Now, what people can do is divide those up into multiple. You can go every 5 minutes, you can go once a day or 10 times a day, whatever it may be. So you can start dividing that up different ways. So great news about billboards is the digital billboard, you have one side, one thing, but you can then control them and put the inventory in there and slice and dice it however you'd like. You may have one person that runs more, you may reduce the cost, but only give them less frequency to put up there on the board. Both sides of those, if you have a 2-sided sign, then would also drive, you could have up to 18 or 16 people on one sign. So front and back would have 8 on one side, 8 on the other, and you could have 16 people. So great way to get lots of people, very flexible because you can build an ad and have it up within minutes. Literally, I can take it, enter it into my computer or my phone, push it to any sign that I have, and it can be up there in minutes, which is a lot of fun sometimes. So you can do fun stuff for people. You can donate it, you can help out, you can put emergency messaging, that kind of stuff can go up because you have the ability to push it so fast. Now, the downsides to digital billboards are they're electric. They run to really, really, really big television at the end of the day, and you're running power to that. So you have electricity, you have internet. So when the internet's up or down, for example, we got hit with a tornado just 2 weeks ago, and I have a billboard in the path of the tornado. There was no power for a couple of days, no internet, different things like that. And so the board will go down. And so you have to wait for power to be restored. So you start introducing technology, it's great, but then sometimes it's down. So there's good and bads to both the digital and the static, the billboards that are out there.
Is your portfolio made up of mostly digital or mostly static?
So I actually prefer the static. So I have more static than I do digital. And the reason is this, I'm doing this for a reason of simplicity. So I built this for me to have passive income, to be able to do a minimal amount of work on that and a minimal amount of downtime. And so by doing that, static, they're up. They change about once a year. I don't worry about them. If something gets, again, messed up, a piece of vinyl comes down, I can get it replaced pretty easily. I have electric lights and that's it. Other than that, it's a big piece of steel and buried into the ground and not much can happen to it. So a lot easier on the do it now. Not as flexible, right? So I give up the flexibility of being able to run quicker ads or change out or be able to do multiple ads, because what's great about a digital billboard, if I have a client that wants to run 2 different messages, let's just say it's a lunch and a dinner time, And I can do that for a restaurant where they have a message that comes up during the lunch hour that says their lunch hour special, their dinner time at the dinner time special, and it can do that. And we can schedule that out for weeks or months on holidays, different things, where they can run different ads. So it gives them some flexibility, but then you also have the other side of it, which it changes, you're sharing it with other people, and it flips through there versus you just having your own space dedicated to just you on a static board.
Absolutely. So I want to get a little bit more into, you said you prefer the static boards, the nuts and bolts of getting an advertisement up there. So refresh me on, if I have one static billboard in a busy area, did you say that was about $1,000 a month?
Let's just say, $1,000 would be a good
on average. Okay. Mm-hmm. So $1,000 coming in every month. Is there a contract involved?
Yes,
and how long
for
is
sure.
it?
So most of them are 12 to 18 months that we do on a contract.
12 to 18 months. All right. So that's some nice bona fide income for a nice extended period of time. What does the cost to the advertiser for graphics and for the hanging of it, what does that look like to them?
So the actual graphics, so we actually provide, or they provide the graphics, and we can sometimes do that at minimal cost. So we don't try to make a lot of money. That's anywhere from $30 to $100 to $200 if they want something really, extensive and they need logos developed and all that. Most of the time, graphics is kind of a table stakes to play in the game. And so we provide those, or they provide them, or we at least assist them in that. Then you get to the actual print. So you start thinking about 20 by 40s or 10 by 30s or 12 by 40 pieces of vinyl. So imagine your banners that you've produced to hang in like a sports game or something like that, right? You go out there or in the ballpark. And so all of a sudden you have those things. We have these times hundreds and hundreds of square feet. Those are around somewhere between $750 to $1,500 per print for that to be printed off for them. And then you have somebody that installs that. So I've set my business up where I don't really touch much of anything. And so I have an installer that comes out and actually hangs that billboard on the frame itself.
Wow. Okay. So the design is minimal. That's maybe use Photoshop or Canva and create it for them. Or they may send you a design. It's just a matter of getting it fitted to the proper dimensions for print. You have an installer, he goes and hangs it. Out of curiosity, two curious questions. A, do you ever have an advertiser that sends you a graphic and you're like, that's really, that you don't want to run that? Or are you just like, hey, this is yours, we're putting it up there?
No, I always look at it and make a recommendation. Now, at the end of the day, it's up to them, right? But I like to make sure, because at the end of the day, I want it to work. And this is what I say to people is a lot of people think it's a print ad. And so they're trying to squeeze as much stuff in there as you can. But I'm saying people are driving down the highway. You want them to remember one key thing. What is that? And if I was to drive by that, what would that be? And so we work with that and say, okay, do you want it to be a website? Do you want it to be a phone number? Do you just want it to be a name that they can Google? Do you want it to be your 5-star reviews that you're showing? And start to look at those different components. So we do try to educate. Somebody comes in with an ad that we don't feel like will work, we'll push back a little. Now we may just ask questions to see why they want it, or maybe they've had great success with it somewhere else. And so we'll try to run that for them. But ultimately it's up to them, but we want it to work. What we don't want is somebody come back and saying, I did billboards and they never worked, right? I tried them and they didn't work. And it's like, well, why? And we start to look at the ad and there's 4,000 things on it, no call to action. You can't see any of it. The font's too small, too many pictures, too many things on it. And you're like, what in the world's going on here? And no one's clear about what the ask is.
Yeah, there's a billboard not far from my place where I drive up the hill to get to my house, and I see it every day. And it's just so much stuff going on. And as an advertiser myself, it drives me nuts when I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a total wasted opportunity for them because can't read half of it. Doesn't make sense. It's too busy. Usually a person's mind shuts down when there's too much going on, right? So that's going to be an important part of it, is making sure the design checks out.
Oh, absolutely. No, and that's what a lot of people will send you their Canva design. But if you're printing something, it has to be to specs. It's kind of like when you're printing in a magazine or doing so. Websites are different than magazines print versus then large scale printing is at a different scale. So they have to understand the scaling of that and be able to do that. And a lot of times they don't understand that. So they're like, oh, just stretch it out. And you're like, no, you can't do that because it gets pixelated and all that stuff. So you have it pulled out. So we do try to look at it. We send them the specs that they have. They either create it, or that's why we like to just sometimes say, hey, we'll provide it for you so that we know it works well.
So let's keep rolling with that point. Let's talk about impressions and expectations of the advertiser. How do you measure the amount of impressions, or essentially the amount of people, the exposure that this board is going to get? How do you let the advertiser know that, hey, these can work for you? Here's why. Yeah,
so great news is there's a couple ways, and there's different things you can get. There's analytics companies that actually do that for the highway, but the easiest is the states and every highway and the federal highways actually keep traffic counts on roads. So they actually put lines down over that, and you can go out and find that on the internet that says this is how much traffic drove across this road this year, and see that change year to year either. So you can either see the growth or the decline. And so that's what you're kind of looking for. You can do it based on that, and you can find those traffic counts, or you can do another one on analytics. The thing with the traffic counts is sometimes you're selling on traffic counts, sometimes you're selling on just, it's the location, and this is the market pricing. And so it's like buying houses. Sometimes a house in one area sells for more because it's just more valuable. That billboard that I shared with you at the beginning of the story was right next to 3 different neighborhoods. That is a great location for realtors and furniture stores and car dealers, because people are literally driving underneath it. Even though it may be a lower traffic count than the main highway, they're very engaged. So what we say is, what's the retention rate of this? I tell this story to a lot of people when I'm out talking sometimes. It's, if you were driving through a forest and I say, there's trees everywhere, can you recall any one of those trees through the forest? And most people answer is, no, they can't, right? There was too many trees, I couldn't see it. But now if you're driving through the desert and all of a sudden there's one huge tree standing there in the middle of the desert, are you going to remember that one tree? Absolutely. So that's the idea, that sometimes it's about recall or the visibility of the sign versus just the traffic count. So sometimes we're like, look, you're getting a lot of recall from this. I had another sign that I actually drove to a local coffee shop, and somebody was asking me about it. And I was like, oh yeah, I have this a sign over by the airport. And they said, oh, does that have, and they named off the name of the company that was on that. And I was like, that's exactly the one. That tells me that recall was really good. I just told them a general location, and then they recalled the name of that business that was on that sign. That tells you that it worked and the recall is good. So sometimes it's about traffic, sometimes it's about recall, and normally it's a combination of both of those things. You think about all the other media. You have music or stereo in your car, you have podcast, you have the radio itself, you have all the different satellite radios. And so you have choices, thousands of channels within that. Same with television. You have cable, you have DirecTV, you have Hulu and YouTube TV. And so it's hard to, the segmenting is harder to get. And I can change that, fast forward that, move through that. The one place I still can't do that is a billboard. I cannot change a billboard as I drive past it. I can turn my head or whatever, but I'm going to drive past it and view it. And that's one of the great things about it. It's there, it creates that top of mind awareness. So we've had 2 or 3 different use cases for that. My air conditioning went out and I need it. So they go Google and they realize, oh, I've seen that person's brand. They are now credible. The other side of that, we've even had people that had sales teams in the local market. They put up a billboard just for their outside sales teams to go out. And when their customers were out there, they're like, oh, we've seen you have this billboard. And they're like, oh yeah, that's us. And it gave them credibility as they were making sales calls in a local market versus just coming in and they're like, I've never heard of you, never seen anything about you. So it actually gave them credibility. So 2 ways to use it, both for the advertising and the credibility part of it.
At Evernorth Health Services, we believe costs shouldn't get in the way of life-changing care. And we're doing everything in our power to make it possible. Behavioral health solutions that also keep your projections at their best? It's possible. Pharmacy benefits that benefit your bottom line? It's possible. Complex specialty care that cares about your ROI. It's possible. Because we're already doing it. All while saving businesses billions. That's Wonder made possible. Learn more at evernorth.com/wonder.
More and more entrepreneurs and investors are discovering the awesome franchise opportunities that exist across a variety of industries. Franchising can simply be the better path, and interest in franchising is at an all-time high. Lucky for you, John Austenson, founder of FranBridge Consulting and a past Millionaire University guest, is here to help you explore the premier franchise opportunities today. John and his FranBridge Consulting team are part of the largest franchise brokerage in the U.S. and have vetted the market thoroughly. FranBridge is hands down the premier source for the best opportunities in the franchise world, including both active and passive opportunities. From tiny homes to youth soccer to industrial hoses to pets, senior care to mental health, and more. John has served as an Inc. 500 franchisor and is a multi-brand franchisee himself. And he does more placements than anyone else in the country. Sign up for a free consultation call with John today or get a free copy of his book, Non-Food Franchising, at franbridgeconsulting.com. That's franbridgeconsulting.com. Available in the U.S. and Canada.
So I want to talk a little bit about your team and your business more specifically here. It sounds like you have everything streamlined. You've got, like you said, you have an installer, you have graphics. Who's on your team? How did you find them? What does that cost you internally?
Yeah, so as I'm building these out and as I'm teaching others to build out their business as well, I think this is an important piece. You don't want to create a self-employed job for yourself to go to every day. People probably that listen to you have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and you want to be the business owner, the investor. You don't want to create a self-employed job. So that was one of my goals from the start. So I have an accountant that all the bills, invoices, everything runs through them. I don't touch any of those. They do all the bookkeeping, they do all the invoicing, they do all the accounts receivables, and that goes to them. And then I have, like you said, the graphics team, the print team, and then you have the installers. And so you have maintenance, you have all those different teams that are able to take care of that, which is not Chris. Chris Brown is not taking care of all those things every day. Now I have oversight over them as the business owner, and I want to make sure what's going on with them, but I don't have to be the one doing them. And so you want to set that team up. And that looks different for everybody. It depends on the size and the scale that you're trying to achieve.
So if you're just starting out in this, maybe you're just about to, or maybe just have invested in your first billboard, is this something where you recommend learning the ropes and being the solopreneur on it for a while? Or is it get in, get that board, and then start finding a designer, start finding that install? Well, you kind of need an installer. I don't know how many people are getting up on scissor lifts on their own. But
not me. Yeah. No, I think it depends on your mindset, right? So this is the thing. Are you going to be a business owner? Or are you going to get yourself in a job? And a lot of people start the businesses and they say, I'm going to be a business owner. And they actually turn it into a job. And now you just work for yourself, but you're still tied to that job because you're doing all the things. I didn't want that. So I said from the beginning, I had one billboard, one client. I still had a bookkeeper doing all my books for me. And that's been 13 years and I haven't touched it, like not once. And so I'm not going to go try to save a couple of bucks to do the QuickBooks on it. Does it make maybe not as much, but I don't have to touch it or do it. And I think it's worth it now. I have a sellable asset at the end of the day. When you're the one that's in charge of everything or you're the bottleneck, then they want to buy that business. It gets harder to sell that. Or you couldn't replace you with somebody else. Like a bookkeeper is actually pretty interchangeable. I could go find another bookkeeper tomorrow if something happened to mine or I didn't like that. Same with a print company or a graphic designer. I can go to Fiverr, Upwork, or whatever it may be. So I can change that out, or I could sell it to somebody else and they could take over those pretty easily. So it's not relying on me or my practices of how I did it. It's pretty standard, and that way I'm not having to be the one that's holding that up or creating myself a job.
Right. So you can go out, and are these mostly contract labor, like with the designer? And I guess, do you contract a sign hanging company?
Yeah. So the graphic design for sure, just whenever I need them. I have one that I use pretty regularly. But luckily that industry works that way. There's a lot of graphic designers that work and they prefer to work as a 1099 employee, just contract labor. So I can pay them when I can do that. I can pass that through to the client or the customer, or I can then just eat that and I know what that cost would be. And then the same thing with the installers, doing the same thing. Now, my bookkeeping is a regular expense that I have, but it's just a percentage or amount of money every month. And it's not that much. It's grown over the years. You're talking $200 to $500 a month to have somebody manage your full bookkeeping. Like I don't touch it. Now the taxes are different at the end of the year, but you have payroll, you have all those things. They handle everything for you.
And you have a pretty stable portfolio. You're not needing to do graphic design every day. Like you said, a contract is 12 to 18 months on a static board. That's not very often you have to create new designs.
No, that's absolutely right. The idea is that you're not turning over a ton of clients every month. You're keeping them happy and they're staying on long term. I've had some for 10, 12 years. They will change their ads every year or so to give new, fresh looks and give different things. But the idea is that it's not a change every month type thing. Even on the digital boards, we don't change them out every month because you have to become consistent with the messaging for people to start to pick that up. So I may not need that air conditioning fix tomorrow, but in 3 months I may need it. And you want to continue to develop that brand so that when you do need it and I go to Google and I look you up that you're there and they have that brand recall.
Awesome. So do you serve as your kind of operations manager, or do you have like a number two to where you are truly working 1 to 5 hours a week or a month, whatever that number is?
I'm actually working the 1 to 5 hours a month, but I am overseeing it. It's not, I don't have a ginormous company. So I'm not worried about that. I'm not in 10 states and thousands of boards. Now, if that happened, I probably would need more people, but I've designed this as a lifestyle business that I can keep, create that passive income and live off of it, or I can sell. I've built up an asset that I could go sell tomorrow and have either way. And then it allows me to do other things. So I do a lot of real estate investing. I help people with that. I do it myself. I can develop stuff out. So it allows me to continue to be an entrepreneur. Or if you wanted to, this is one I started why I had a W-2 for several years. I still had a W-2 job. I was able to do both with 1 to 5 hours a month and not a lot of downtime pulling me out.
That's an incredible way to go about doing that, because it's truly a side gig, especially when you started on having your full-time job. But being able to scale that to where you're at, but also only commit 1 to 5 hours a month is incredible. So you mentioned the sellability of this, if that's a word. It's a new word now, if not. But the fact that you have this portfolio, now you could sell it if you ever wanted to. You have a lot of equity in this. What does that look like? Have you been approached by buyers? What do they offer? What is kind of the industry average if you were to sell?
Yeah, so yes, definitely been offered to have lots of potential buyers. Again, the big players out there, they're always looking to acquire. And it's different in every market, but normally it's a multiple of revenue minus some of your expenses. So if you have $30,000 of revenue, it may be anywhere from 7 to 12 times your forward revenue minus your expenses. So that's some of those things. So you start thinking about that.
7 to 12x?
7 to 12x of forward revenue, not just your EBITDA or anything like that. It's actual revenue that you're bringing in. And so it depends on the sign. So wooden signs, kind of run down signs that'll have a lifetime value, right? They'll degrade, will have a lower value. You have your steel structures that'll have a little higher value. And then your digitals do have a higher value on top of that because they do have more inventory on them or other things. So it allows you to get a little bit more multiple on those.
Okay. So that's 7 to 12x, basically your annual revenue minus some expenses.
Yeah, it's like selling a business, right? So that's what I love about it. You're building a passive income portfolio like you do with homes or multifamily or commercial property, but then you also have a multiple revenue on the front side because you've built a business. So you have a media company, an outdoor media company that you can then sell. And that has tremendous value to outdoor media companies.
Absolutely. So are you continually growing your portfolio and building new boards? Are you happy where you're at and maintaining it? Or how are you playing it that way?
Yeah, so I'm definitely content with what I have, and it's been great. Now, I'm going to continue to grow. I think you cycle through, right? You push hard and then you take your foot off the gas. And sometimes we take it off, whether we should or not. We just want to hang out. And so like I said, I retired at 42 a couple of years ago, and I've really just chilled. I've done nothing for about 2.5 years now. I laid by the pool, hung out, helped our local entrepreneur and startup world around here through our accelerators, the university here in our town, and giving back and helping those. And so that's been a lot of fun to be able to do that. Now, I'm excited to actually start teaching this to other people. So that's been something that's fun. I get that question and have for years. Now, I didn't want to create competitors in my own market with my own friends. So I never shared this with anybody of how they do this, but I'm starting to share this. I'm creating this Billboard Academy to teach others how to do the same thing. So that's probably, as much as I'm going to continue to build my own portfolio, I'll probably help others build their portfolios and either do it with them, alongside them, teach them all the above, and continue to do that because it's a lot of fun. And it's been a fun journey for me, to be able to build wealth and build financial freedom, build that passive income and do that through Billboard as well as other real estate. And so that's what I love to do.
That's wonderful. And that's also the philanthropy side of your business, Signs of Good, right? Is it portions of your income from the billboards go to supporting Signs of Good, right?
Signs of Good is the name of my actual company. And so what we do is we try to break the cycle of poverty in our local market. And so when people advertise on the signs, we then turn around and give to local nonprofits in the areas such as food insecurity, single moms, foster care, adoption. And what we want to do is break the cycle of poverty through helping those people in those situations. And the signs are what's going to do that. And so Signs of Good is my organization / name of my business. And so businesses get to have double from that. We can say it's doing double the duty, right? So it's still going to advertise, but it's also going to help somebody out here locally.
That's a great part of being able to have a lean, mean business that brings in a ton of profit, because that leaves plenty of room for you to do good just outside of earning money and finding your own financial freedom.
It's a lot of fun, for sure. That's my favorite part.
And then one last question for me, is this a type of business where it needs to stay local? Or if we have listeners out there who are hopefully wildly inspired now to possibly dip their toes in the billboard space, is this something where you could really take this to the moon and expand it beyond your local area and hit the different states, different cities, and really build a really large portfolio?
100% you could, absolutely. So I think it's definitely doable. And luckily, there's only a couple states that don't allow billboards, and so you're not really tied down by that. And so most places you can, so you can do this. Now, and these have been around for so long that there's people that can operate them for you, help you install them, all that across the country. So you don't have to be. Now, executing it in the market, knowing the rents, knowing the whatever, it's like anything else. When you own a business that's outside of your area, you do have to understand that marketing and advertising is a local business similar to real estate. It is about what that market trend is. If you're in a declining market, probably the advertising will be declining just like it is in the real estate market. If everybody's moving out and going away, it's going to be less valuable. But if people are coming in or the metro is growing, or even one side of the city versus another, you see how populations move from an east side to a west side or a north side to a south side. And so you want to be on the head of that where they're growing toward, not where they're declining at, so that the value of the rents that you get are more.
Well, I'm going to start landing the plane here, but this is so much awesome and actionable information. Chris, what is one piece of advice you have, entrepreneurial advice that you would have for our listeners?
So one piece of advice I think that's really helped me personally is understanding that it's who we become along the journey versus what we have at the end. And so I probably got this wrong early in my career. I wanted to have the stuff. And so I didn't realize, though, I first had to become the person to do the things, to have the stuff. And then it became not about the stuff. It actually became more about the becoming. And I think that was interesting. And so having that understanding of myself and who I'm becoming, that's what's really important, is us becoming the people that we were designed to be and fulfilling that and living that to the full. And I think that's one of those things that we got to go find people to help us. I like to tell this story that was in the barn the other day. I was working out, and there was this hummingbird that flew into the barn while I was working out, and it got trapped up in the rafters. It flew up in the rafters, and I have barn doors on either end of my barn, and my gym's in there. It's flying back and forth, and I'm like, this bird's going to kill itself. It's really hot. It's wearing itself out. There was no way out. It could come down and fly out there, but a lot of us have seen birds get stuck in garages or other places, and it's hard to get them out. So I went in there and I actually put a hummingbird feeder on top of a ladder, on top of the rafters, and he landed. He got some rest. And then I kept lowering that hummingbird feeder down on that ladder, and he finally kept coming down, but then he would leave and go straight back up into the rafters. It was really frustrating for me, actually, because I was like, come on, you little silly bird, get out of here. I don't want you to die in here. But he would take back off and go back and forth and back and forth. I finally continued to lower it down, and I got it low enough that he finally flew out. And what I like to equate that to, I sat there afterwards and I'm like, oh my gosh, how many times is that me where I am getting myself running back and forth, trying to get some answer, trying to do something, and I couldn't even I tried to get myself out of it, but what I really needed was somebody to come alongside me and point me in the right direction. I never touched that hummingbird. I never was able to physically be around that, but what I did was show him a path, lower him down so that he was set free. And that's what I think is important too, is having somebody that's able to show you how to be set free. So sometimes that's a coach, sometimes that's a consultant, sometimes that's somebody that's just a friend. But I think we all need those. And that's part of that becoming process, is we need somebody to see around the corner, someone that can show us that, look, you're running back and forth and this isn't working. But if you just do this or take this path, it makes it a lot easier for you in life and you could be set free. And so I love that example that was there for me to see that day and to watch that, and thought about myself, how many times I was that hummingbird. And probably some of your listeners, they're those hummingbirds. They're trying to go out and just create this extra income so that their family can be free. Maybe so they can quit a job, so they can go on a vacation, so they can do something. And they're trying all the get rich quick stuff, and that won't work. It just takes time. It takes you committing to something and being the best of it over time. And that's part of that becoming. And so that's where finding a coach, finding someone to help you, I think is super important. And I highly recommend that to others, is to find someone to help you see around those obstacles and get out of that space that you're in.
I love that analogy, and I can personally relate to it. I waited a long time in my own marketing business to seek out help and coaching and mentorship. And when I finally did, it made a huge difference. So I think that's perfect. I think just about all the listeners out there either are or have been one of those hummingbirds that's floating around hitting his head in the rafters. I wanted to make sure we reiterate your Billboard Academy. What's the website we can find you at? How can folks get connected with you? And we can spread the word, and maybe someone out there has resonated with this and might be a great fit.
Yeah. So the easiest way is wantmore.org. So WANTMORE.org. So like you want more money. And what I put there is a little resource for people just to see the guide to passive income through billboards. If that's something they're interested in, they can learn a little bit more about that and reach out and talk to me that way. And if I can help them in any way, I'd love to be there for them. I think this is one of those, it's not a fair game. Billboards are not fair game. It's one of those, if you understand the insides and the outs, then it's a fun game, but it's not a fair game. And so until you learn the rules from somebody that's been in it, it's not easy to play, but it's super easy once you have somebody show you the ropes. Love to help however I can.
Well, Chris, you're a gentleman and a scholar. I really appreciate you coming and spending some time with me today and sharing all your knowledge with our loyal MU listener crowd. It's been a great time.
Man, I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much. It's been an honor and pleasure for myself.
I hope you found today's lesson as valuable as I did. The biggest thing I got from Chris today was the fact that he mentioned this business isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. And if you think that you're in business to get rich quick, it doesn't work that way. Chris grew this business over years and years. He's been at it over 10 years already, and it's now something that has led to his financial freedom, something that he's very passionate about and very passionate about teaching others. But the fact that he got into this business early, he kept working at it, kept adding to his portfolio, and now it's almost nearly passive income, goes to show that a little bit of effort goes a long way. So thank you to Chris for joining me today. It was an absolute blast. And thank you all, MU Nation, for tuning in with us and listening with me today and learning from Chris. I hope you had a fantastic time. And while you're at it, if you haven't yet already, go get your free business course at millionaireuniversity.com/training. We want to help you get your feet off the ground, get you moving in your business if you haven't already, and give you all the key things you need to get that business moving. All right, thank you all again. We're going to see you next time on the Millionaire University podcast. This is Brian Gearin signing off. Keep crushing it, my friends.